Hello everyone, it is Joe here from OmniPoke, the channel that brings you guys everything Pokemon, and I've returned from Indianapolis where I participated in the North American International Championships, and unfortunately again it is a sob story from me where I was not able to progress further than day 2, not been able to do so in Brazil either, so the big stages have not been kind to me this year, and overall for my own top 22 as well, it means I'm no longer in contention. I think I'm going to be in the top 30 of Europe going into Worlds this year. So I still feel overall I've had a great season. Looking back at tournaments, I think there was one game, one winning in, I think right at the start of the season, Liverpool, where I threw my winning in, and that should have put me into a better point total. But I think other than that, maybe a few deck choices here and there. I think Brazil is a big regret when I played Quadlapris. But other than that, I'm really happy with my year, Pokemon-wise. I think I've made decent deck choices in the majority of my tournaments. And I've had fairly good results, the highest ranked commentator of anyone. And it's kind of greedy to want to be not only a commentator and also get top 22. I think it was a big challenge for me to set that goal for myself, and I wasn't quite able to do it in the end. But yeah, I still feel I had a good run this season, and I'm going to be looking forward to Worlds. But the deck in front of you is in fact the deck that I took to the North American Internationals. I'm going to be doing a full deck profile of this in a couple of days' time, but I'll talk generalities of why I chose this deck in a moment. Basically, I needed to make top 16 in order to get 150 points, which would elevate me 1 point over Nico Alabas, who is currently, or at the time, was the top 22 place, and that would then squeak me in, literally 1 point above him, had I have hit 150 points, making top 16. But as we all know, the event was actually 1,354 Masters, so I would have had to get basically in the top like 1% of players in order to achieve my day 2 invite, so it was always going to be asking for a lot. And how did I land on this list? Well, for any of you who have been watching the streams over the last few weeks or just know me from my own testing or whatever, I've been testing Decidueye Ninetales for like a month, and it was the deck that I was most likely going to play for Indy. I was really happy with my list. The biggest concern going forward was that I wasn't comfortable with my Espeon Garbodor matchup, and I felt the deck was so inherently strong that I could afford to take 1 or 2 losses to Espeon Garb. I even put in like Promo Mewtwo to try and improve my matchup, and I had like Espeon EX. I had a lot of tricks in the deck to try and fend off Espeon Garb, but ultimately I wasn't getting over 40% win rate. And even a couple of days before the event, myself and Ryan Morehouse were testing the matchup because he was also going to be playing Decidueye Ninetales. He actually did end up doing so. He couldn't get more than a 50% win rate at all against Espeon Garb, and my list was just pretty straightforward. So overall, that's the reason why I went away from Decidueye Ninetales. I was just too scared. My backup deck was actually going to be Espeon Garbodor myself, and the only innovation would be that I'd play 2 Parallel City to try and improve my Zoroark. But even then, I felt that Zoroark would be a matchup that I'd have to dodge during the day. And going into the event, you guys have probably all seen my top 10 decks for Indy list, and Zoroark and Espeon Garb were very high on that list, and I felt those were probably going to be 1 or 2 of the top decks going into the event, and that's what put me off playing Espeon and put me off playing Decidueye. So how did I end up here? Well, you guys who, again, if you watch the streams, you'll know Luke Kirkham, one of my good friends, testing partners, and he has been playing this Xerneas break deck for a couple of weeks. He went to a League Cup playing Huntail elixirs, and we ultimately said, well, that's just a joke deck. You can't ever beat things like Tapu Bulu or Decidueye. So we ended up shifting over to Xerneas break, and semi-seriously he was testing it, semi-seriously I was testing it here and there in between my games of Decidueye. Really, I didn't give it much credit, but on paper, this deck does a lot of good things. We're playing the Mewtwo, we're playing the Oricorio. These things mean that we probably have a pretty decent Espeon Garbodor. I don't think it's like more than 65%, but I think having a 65% against probably the best deck in format, or what I thought was the best deck in format going into the tournament, is a good thing. I also feel we have like a 80-20 Zoroark Dramper due to the resistance we have, and naturally 150 HP on a non-EX means they always have to two-shot through this guy while we are one-shotting through everything else. If they are one-shotting, it's with a Dramper, which we can one-shot back, and that's a 2-for-1 prize trade anyway. So we have a very, very favourable Zoroark, which is also a big tick, because if Espeon and Dramper Garbodor are the two best decks in the format, many people will be bringing Zoroark, because it is also on a high power level in its own right, and has a favourable against the Garbodor builds. So I believe that those three were the three that I had to tackle the most. I also, as you can see, played the Oricorio, again expecting some amount of Vespiquen. I know it was popular in a few of the US regionals, some of the more recent ones as well, so I was happy to play Oricorio. Not only does he like pretty much make Vespiquen a very good matchup, it also means that we can choice band and hit 120 on Espeons, so I was happy with this tech because it improves two matchups, whereas the Mewtwo is very passive in the Espeon Garb matchup. He basically sits on the bench with 1 energy on, and threatens the Espeon from ever putting 3 energy on it, because then we can choice band KO. Whereas Oricorio is more direct. We can just slap 1 energy, 1 choice band, hit 120, finish it off with a Xerneas later on. And it's basically what means that we don't have to sit there being slow Geomancying for 10 turns. We can just afford to two-shot through the Espeons without playing too many item cards, and then similar to the Zoroark, in the case of Garbodor, when they can't hit 150 because we haven't overplayed our item cards, and we can just 2-for-1 on them. And that was the idea against that deck. So yeah, I think that most awkward matchups for this deck are Vikabulu, as well as Decidueye, Ninetales, Coco. I felt there would be a few players playing Decidueye for certain, but I did feel there wouldn't be a huge amount, just because it does fear Espeon Garbodor, which is one of the most popular decks. So I felt that that would be the loss that I try and target. Maybe I hit 1 or 2, and I can still make it into day 2 with this list. So I start off in round 1, and I'm up against Volcanion, and this is a fairly easy couple of wins for me. He's playing a Brooklet Hill build with no max elixir, which basically means I can sit there Geomancying for 3 turns until I can one-hit KO everything on the board and just announce live stream 3 times, and that's basically what happened in both games. Additionally, my opponent didn't draw too well. He was pretty much dead drawing in both games. I believe his opening supporter in both games was Delinquent. One of the times it was to a 0-card hand, but I already had Oranguru on bench, and the other time I had like an 8-card hand, and he just threw Delinquent down to get rid of my Fairy Garden more than anything else. But yeah, it was a slow Volcanion build that even went slower because it didn't draw optimally, so I was able to Geomancy a bunch, live stream for game. In round 2, I'm up against Jarrett Grimes. He's actually playing Toxapex Garbodor, and the tech Mewtwo and the tech Oricorio came in handy here, because just like Espeon, Toxapex actually has weakness to Psychic. These 2 checks were a great way to win that game. I actually did drop 1 game against Toxapex Garb, because he timed his GX attack so well. For those of you who don't know, the turn that Toxapex does the 150, which is perfect numbers on our break, he is immune from attacks, which basically meant he could deal with 1 break, then Lysandre up my 2nd break and KO that without me doing anything. I just had to bring up another Xerneas and Geomancy back some energy, and I just lost too much tempo at that point, and Mewtwo had already been dealt with by his Garbodors and stuff, so I actually ended up losing 1 game, and it was a scarier matchup than I thought. I think it's much harder than Espeon Garb actually is, which is weird. But basically, because I sit Geomancying, he has the time to Elixir onto his own Toxapex, the small thing, I can't remember what the small one's called, and then just evolve into Toxapex. Use your GX attack at the right time. So it was actually a really fun best of 3 series. In round 3, I'm up against Trainer Wolf, one of the Poker Beach writers, and he is playing a Vikavolt Tapu Bulu. In both games, fortunately for me, he leads Grubbin and can't move Grubbin for a couple of turns. This gives me the time to Geomancy up and build the board to the point where I can KO even fighting Fury Belted Tapu Bulus and it goes all very swimmingly. Happens in both games. He gets the tough rub of the green. I've actually seen his list now, and he only played 1 Floatstone and 1 Olympia, so very punishing for him that he couldn't find the outs to move the grub in quick enough. I think he also whiffed the Vika Volt turn 2 every time as well, so tough rub of the green for him, and that's pretty much what we need in order to beat Vika Bulu. It's one of our hardest matchups, especially when they play Fighting Fury Belt, because it means they can hit 130 without the discard, which is really bad for us, because it means the Hex is no longer like a viable option, because they'll keep the energy on the board, and they'll be strong charging to other stuff the whole time. Yeah, a fortunate win in round 3 against Trainer. Good player, and tough rub the green, as I said. In round 4, I'm up against Grant Manley. This is actually streamed, and this is by far the highlight of my weekend. Obviously, I've done the streams before, but only ever behind the caster desk, and it is a very different experience being live, playing against another very good player, Grant, and it was really cool experience to stream as a player, and got to show off the deck, which is very cool. I got a huge amount of support, which was like amazing. The whole time my game was going on, my phone was in my pocket and it was just buzzing the whole time because I had so many people just messaging me, and it was just a really cool thing. And he was playing Darkrai with Garbodor, so it was kind of Turbo Darkrai but sort of slower, with a few other techs in there like Enhanced Hammers. You guys can check out the stream to see how that ended up in great detail, but I did end up winning 2-0. We naturally have a favoured matchup. I wasn't even Geomancying game 1 at all. I was just attaching to bench and passing, and it was still enough for me to win the game, because basically he's a 2-prize Pokemon, my main attack is a 1-prize Pokemon, and it means that it takes me 3 attacks to win the game. It basically takes him 6. So once we both build our boards, it's just me trading much more efficiently than he ever will, and that's how we were able to win round 4. So at 4-0, I was feeling really good at that point. Tamao, who was also playing this list, he played 59 cards the same. He didn't play Oranguru, he played a second Nespal. But I personally love Oranguru and wouldn't change this guy ever. I think he's really important to the deck. Yeah, we were both sitting at 4-0, and we felt like we'd found the rogue deck of the tournament. And it's crazy to be like at the top tables 4-0 with a deck that pretty much everyone had a different reaction to. When people see Regirock, they think it's pancakes, and they try and look for the Ninja Boy, and they're scared of Snorlax and stuff. So it's just really cool to see people's reaction to seeing this deck at the top tables. But nonetheless, I was 4-0, and feeling really good at this point in the tournament, because it meant that for my next 5 rounds, I could lose twice and still make it into cut, which is a pretty good feeling to have at that point. So yeah, in at round 5, I'm up against Zach Lesage, brother of course, Jay Lesage, and he's playing Decidueye, Tapu Koko, Espeon, all that good stuff. Can't remember if it was Ninetales, it may have been. But these games were 2 very sad losses for me. Game 1, I lead Tapu Lele, and I can't do much other than just attach and pass for a few turns until he just knocks me out. And in Game 2, I lead Regirock. Now you can see here, I have 3 Fairy Guns in my deck, so leading Regirock shouldn't be too terrible. I even have Max Elixir, so I can still get Geomancy turn 1 going second. Obviously, of course, we were going first because we lost Game 1. But, you know, leading Regirock isn't a problem. Unless you can't find your Fairy Gardens. And it turned out that 3 of my Fairy Gardens were in the bottom 9 cards of my deck. And I found this out by sycamoring every card into my discard pile, looking for Fairy Garden, not being able to find it. I have to pass. He has to Decidueye ping 3 times on the bench, and he can flying flip all my attackers. And I swiftly feel very depressed and lose the game because I can't move Regirock for 7 turns. Yeah, very upsetting loss. We actually have tested, me and Tamao were testing Xerneas against Decidueye, because basically when I'd written off Decidueye for myself and Espeon for myself, we said, right, okay, if it's going to be Xerneas, I have to know that it can beat Decidueye. And it can beat Decidueye. It's not an easy matchup at all. They play around your EXP shares very well, and they have a lot of HP. So basically, you're trying to 2-shot Decidueye the entire game, maybe take a 1-shot on a Shaman or a Lele. That's your win condition. That's the way you win. But it can work, because 150 HP on non-EXs, it's a lot to get through. You can weave in Hex. All these things can bode well for you. And I feel, even now that I lost to Zach, obviously hideously, I still feel the matchup isn't terrible. I don't think you're favoured against the Decidueye. Obviously a straight build. I think you're actually better against the Plume build because they set up less Decidueyes overall. I feel the straight build of Decidueye we are not favoured against, but I don't think it's a bad matchup for us. So it's a shame that I wasn't able to actually play the game for the 2 games I played against Zach. Super cool guy. I got to talk to him and chill with him afterwards as well. Get to know him a bit better. First time I really met him. I've met Jay before and obviously he's chill. But yeah, Zach absolutely destroyed me playing Decidueye because I wasn't really able to play the game at all the whole 2 rounds, which is really sad because my deck had been running smooth all day and I was feeling so great at that point. 4-0, the biggest tournament ever. Knowing that I can sack a few rounds here and there. It's just that the way that I lost this round was a real hard beat to take because I wasn't able to play the game at all, and it just makes you want to like shuffle up and play a new game, but it's already game 2 and I've already lost the game. So it's just really upsetting that I couldn't even play the game for 2 rounds. In at round 6, I'm up against Connor Finton, also a very accomplished player. He was one of the players making top 4 in Brazil. He's actually playing Mega Gardy today, and these were close games. Game 1, I have 2 of my Xerneas prized. Now, this is really bad, because Xerneas is not only my early game attacker, but he's also my late game attacker, so when he starts pounding through my Xerneas, I need to have more on the bench powered up, ready to go to respond him. Also, Mega Gardy, similar to Vikabulu, it can KO from turn 2, and it has over 200 HP. So I need to ramp a lot of energy in order to get response KOs. So I need to time my Super Rods well. I need to Super Rod back in my 1 Xerneas that gets KO'd first. Get that back on the board, start EXP sharing, elixiring, whatever else back to it to make sure that I can continue to live stream. And basically I can't continue to live stream because I only have 2 Xerneas and I can't pull more out of the prizes because I can't take prizes because I don't have enough energy to one-shot his Guardies. So, very awkward times. I eventually start taking prizes by going aggro on a Tapu Lele that eventually has 6 energy on it. I hex it so I can attack twice to finish something off. I do get my Xerneases, but it's too late in the prize race. So I end up losing game 1. In game 2, so sad. So again, it's the 3rd game in a row where I've not been able to play the game because either I've drawn poorly or I've prized poorly. And in game 2 against Connor, I prized 2 of my Xerneas breaks. So everything is fine. I'm geomancying up. I'm hexing when I can. I'm slowing him down. I'm building the board of energies. And then we Sycamore. On the turn we need to attack. And we whiff our break when we have a KO on board. And he has no other energy on board. And I'm really sad. I have to geomancy. I go down another prize. Lose energy because I hadn't even developed EXP share at the time. So now we're back out of range of a KO. Going back into my turn, I top deck the break, which is already triggering. I play it down, Sycamore, all I need is banned, and I whiff, oops. All I need is banned now, and I whiff banned. So then again, I can't one-hit KO the Xerneas, the Guardy. I have to settle for a 2-shot on there. And then it's one of these things where, because I couldn't get the 1-shot with the 1 break I had, by the time I pulled out the other breaks from my prizes, it was already too late. I hadn't established the XP shares on safe places, he could blow them off. Just such a sad loss. I think Mega Guard was a hard matchup, but we can hex at the right times, and if you hit hex at the right times, they can't hit the 150 very nicely. And there were points on his side, because he was also missing things here and there. Like, he missed an energy drop early on, because his setup wasn't optimal either. There were definitely times in the game where I could punish him and just win the game so hard that I would win the game, even with terrible prizes, and it just didn't happen. Draws were again going against me, and it was really awkward. I believe I Sycamored, missed Choice Band, also was able to Ultra Ball my hand down into Orangaroo range and draw like 2 cards and still whiffed. So I did a 9-card dig, and it didn't work. And also in that game, I had a 1-card Sycamore hand, chose to instruct for 2, drew 2 VS Seekers and had to just Sycamore them away. So that was triggering as well. Lots of triggering going on in rounds 5 and 6, and that's what led to a double loss. So now sat at 4 and 2, and that safe haven of losing 2 rounds was spent very greedily by me in the first 2 rounds I had the opportunity. So now, in at round 7, I have to win 3 games to make day 2. 3 rounds to make day 2. And in round 7, I'm up against John Stubstrom, I think it was. I hope I got that right. It might be Stunstrom, something like that. But yeah, he was a Volcanion player. This time, it was not the slow Brooklet Hill build, but in fact the Hooper Elixirs speedy item build. Fortunately, he led Hooper game 1, and he also didn't draw optimally in the opening turns. Couldn't find his Baby Volk. When he did find Baby Volk, he couldn't KO my Xerneas. So again, turns of Geomancy, build the board, live stream for game. Just keep announcing live stream, win very simply. And game 2 goes similarly, where he sets up a bit better, but again, I hexed turn 2, so he was power heatering for 20. Then his second power heater also wasn't a knockout. And when these are the case, I build too many Xerneas and I just win the game. So I pretty much rolled the Volcanion in round 7, which was great because my heart was pounding because I can't lose any more rounds. And this is a speedier Volk, and I was really concerned about the speed of the Volcanion, but he was also not drawing optimally. So good news for us. In at round 8, I'm up against Zach Taylor, and it's my second Vika Bulu of the day. So for those who are keeping track, no Zoroarks or no Espeon Garbs so far, which are the 2 decks that really I was trying to counter. And it's a second Vika Bulu. As I said, against Trainer, I was fortunate in that he led Grub in both games, couldn't move it for a couple of turns, and gave me the time to win. Well, didn't happen for Zach. He led Bulu every time, he got turn 2 Vikavolt every time. And when these things happen, he was additionally playing the Fury Belt build, so he could deal the 130 each turn without the discard. Basically, I get rolled really, really hard. I'm not sure if this went to 3 games or to 2 games. I could be wrong and say that it went to a game 3. I believe I clinched the second game, so it went loss, win, loss. I may have just lost 2 in a row, though. I can't remember. It's a bit of a blur to me. But overall, the round was a loss. The Vika Bulu every game. The reason why I think it was loss, win, loss, because I think he got turn 2 Vikavolt 3 times in a row. And I think he led Bulu 3 times in a row. And when these things happen, you can't win the game because it's a very uninteractive deck. You can't end them out the game because they just strong charge from the deck and announce attacks all over again. It took too long for me to ramp up to 220 HP. 220 damage. Again, it was one of these things where when you miss the XP share, the deck is really bad because you're Geomancying for 2, but the net gain is only 1 because 1's being knocked out. So you're only gaining 20 damage and you're sacking a prize in order to do that. So a few things didn't go my way where I couldn't find the XP share, couldn't get it on Regirock early enough, and I was just leaking too much damage. In game 3, I announced livestream thinking I had KO, but I actually had 210 damage on a Bulu, and then just had to scoop. So yeah, there it is, round 8, dreams crushed. I'm now at a 5-3 record, so Xerneas went as far as it could, and in round 9, playing for Pride, playing for top 128, I'm up against Ryan Peterson, and he is finally flipping over a Zorua for me, which is excellent. Zoro Drampet is a matchup that I'm trying to counter. I actually lose the first game because I pass for like 5 turns. It was hilarious in that my top decks were always basic Pokemon. I believe I led Oricorio. This takes 2 hits before I top deck into Mewtwo, and then I top deck into Oranguru, and then I top deck into Regirock and N. But of course, I'm way too behind on prizes. He went aggro Lele, I believe, to win that game, which was ridiculous. He didn't even see what deck mine was, but he saw the 4 one-of random Pokemon and was kind of concerned at how I was 5-3. But yeah, then in games 2 and 3, my deck does what it's supposed to do finally, and I bridge it out the gang of Xerneas and I start Geomancying away like crazy, and I ramp up the damage to get the KOs. He took the approach to try and Tapu Koko Flying Flip my Xerneas into range of Zoroarks, so that he wasn't leaving too many 2-prize attackers, the Drampers, on the board, which is a fair enough approach. He was getting 1-hit KOs on a couple of my breaks, but by the time it's my 3rd break, I have 2 or 3 bench Pokemon, and he's dealing 80 with the resist coming in, so even 100 with a Kukui would be out of range after a double flying flip. So yeah, then I was able to just pound through the rest of his board with a live stream, and that is pretty much how the deck works. You just build up the board of energy to the one-shot mark, and then you just start one-shotting away. So yeah, I ended up 6-3, and actually ended up going 135th. So once again, just like in Brazil, I bubbled top 128, and ended up just getting the 70 points rather than however many it is for top 128. I can't remember. But regardless, I needed top 16, and I needed day 2, and neither of these things happened. So basically, when I lost my third game, I was just really sad. I think the saddest loss, like, it was really annoying to lose to Zach because I couldn't play the game. The sad loss was to Connor because then I know I have to win 3 on the bounce, and I feel he didn't draw optimally either, and there were definitely openings there for me to win the game, and my deck just didn't cooperate, and the 2 prize Xerneas was so crushing, so hard to come back from when it's an aggressive deck that takes prizes from turn 2. So yeah, that is my tournament run. I do still rate the deck. I'll be profiling this in more detail later on. But overall, yeah, that's it from me. My overall season has been decent. I'm 30th in Europe. I believe at least 30th. I think I might be like 28th, but just off the mark, just off the board of top 22. It's always a hard goal to set, to make top 22 when you're also commentating. I missed out on a regionals and an internats. I know I've been to 2 internats, which is more than a lot of people already, but I still, missed out on the London one, and I missed out on a big regionals as well. So maybe it's greedy to try and make top 22 at the same time as commentate. But looking back at my own tournaments, I believe all the way back at the start of the season in Liverpool, I threw my chance at the winning in. And also I was repaired out of an auto-win matchup, which is just sad. Where else have I played? I went to... I think that's the only tournament where I threw my winning in. I literally, I benched a Shaman and lost the game because I benched a Shaman a turn early. And it lost me the game instantly because I was just Lysander for game from the opponent, and that was a winning in a decent matchup for me as well. It was back when Robin Schultz was playing Giratina Hammers, and I basically gave him game on board, which is just really grim. And had I just held the Shaman, obviously it's weak to N, but if I just hold the Shaman, I was playing Mega Guardi at the time, I can dig for Hex next turn or VS Seeker for game. And there was not much he could do about it. And yeah, maybe if I had not been stupid that one game of the season, I could have made top 8 at Liverpool, gone further potentially even, because it was a good cut for Mega Guardi. Although there was 2 sizzles in there, so maybe not. Maybe that's a bit optimistic. But yeah, who knows? My season, I think, overall has been decent. My choice of playing Lapras at Brazil was a low point for me. And I know... looking back at my video about Lapras, me saying I'll never play Rogue for a big tournament again, seems like I'm sat here with the same sad story, again, playing a Rogue deck. But this time I believe it's different. This time the testing was put in, the theory was much more sound than Lapras. Lapras was a pet deck that was actually in a bad metagame state, whereas this is an anti-meta approach that I took, and I just didn't hit the right matchups on the day. It's not great to put your deck choice down to fate and down to what you play against, but I believe that, as you saw in my rounds, I still made a 6-3 record with only playing 1 Zoroark and no Espeons. So the deck is on its own decent power level, which is cool. So unlike Lapras, which can just be crushed by certain bad matchups, I feel that this Xerneas deck is different because it's on its own decent power level. So yeah, that's going to be it, guys. Quick rundown of my day. For the rest of the tournament, it was great to watch the streams. Some great commentary there as well to look back on if you guys haven't watched it all. You can watch my game as well on the stream, day 1, round 4 it is. And you can see this deck in action a bit more if you can't wait to see me play it in a few days' time on PTCGO. But yeah, thanks so much for the support, guys. I think my highlight of Indie was just all the people who came up and said hello to me. It was really fun. Everyone who, you know, enjoys the content and took a picture, asked for me to sign anything, even just shook my hand and said see you later. All of these things was like a great boost for me, and it's just I'm in a really fortunate position where a lot of people like the content, and it's really motivating for us to do more. So next season I'm going to come back stronger. Obviously Worlds is the big chapter for me. There's also Liverpool regionals where I'll hopefully be kick-starting the season in the right way by getting a bunch of points. So next year is the goal for top 22 all over again. The channel's going to be growing, hopefully, and hopefully I'll be casting more as well in the future. So I'm not going anywhere, and this has been a great weekend, even though I didn't quite get the result I was looking for. It just makes me hungrier for the next tournament. So that's going to be it, guys. Thanks for listening to me waffle for this long. I didn't want it to go this long, but I just had lots to chat about, I guess. So yeah, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and this is somehow the first video you've listened to. And leave a like to the video if you did. For now though, it has been Joe from OmniPoke, and I'll be seeing you guys with this deck next time. Cheers.